Coming up, the New York Jets get a statement win and the Ravens knock off Cincy in primetime. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NFL, local experts taking you from game to game through week 5 of the NFL season. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens, and thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Just when it looked like the Jaguars might be figuring something out, hopefully they bring everybody right back down to earth with another stinker, this time against the Texans. Locked On Jags and Locked On Texans go over a tough one to watch in Jacksonville.
The Jaguars lose 13-6 to the winless Houston Texans, who are not winless anymore because they won their 9th straight against Jacksonville, who performed what I call a clunker here, where they outgained 422 to 228. They outgained Houston, but they committed 2 turnovers, one in the red zone by Trevor Lawrence, who has for 2 straight weeks not played like a guy worthy of being the first overall selection in the draft. They have to do some soul searching. They scored 6 points today against Houston. The Jaguars lost a game where they outgained the opponent. And the only answer and the only question that people are wondering now is, when is Trevor going to start looking like the guy we thought he was?
The Houston Texans get their first victory of the season, beating the Jacksonville Jaguars 13-6 on the road. In a day where Dameon Pierce rushed for 99 yards and 1 touchdown, the Texans forced 3 fourth-down stops. Also, Derek Stingley gets his first pick of his young NFL career. But I think the biggest story for the Houston Texans, who were struggling in the first half and has struggled throughout this year, they had a great opportunity and executed on stopping the run attack from the Jacksonville Jaguars. In the first half, the Texans allowed 99 yards. The Jacksonville Jaguars were only able to record 37 more yards in that second half. And so for Houston, you're happy that they're able to get a win on the year, finally being able to take advantage of opportunities falling into their lap. And Lovie Smith gets his first win as the Houston Texans head coach. Make sure you check out the Locked On Texans podcast Monday through Friday, only on the Locked On Podcast Network.
A rocky start to the season for the Titans, but they are once again atop the AFC South. Locked On Titans goes over the win against the Commanders.
The Tennessee Titans make their fans sweat once again, but find a way to come out victorious in Week 5 against the Washington Commanders. My name's Tyler Rowland, host of the Locked On Titans podcast. What else is there to say but King Henry? Derrick Henry was dominant on the day for the Tennessee Titans. He had 102 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns and basically carried the Titans offense on his back on the defensive side of the ball. It was ugly at times for the Titans with the explosive plays from the Commanders, but when the chips were all on the table, David Long gets a goal line interception for the Titans to seal the victory. Classic Tennessee Titans football, but they come away with a win, and not only that, are now leading the AFC South. So for more Tennessee Titans reaction and analysis, head to the Locked On Titans YouTube channel now. I'll be live directly after the game breaking down the entire performance.
Coming up, the Steelers get blown out and the Chargers have luck on their side. This is Locked On Game to Game NFL. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by Built Bar. They're the best tasting protein bars on the market. They are made with 100% real chocolate, so they taste great, but they're good for you too. They are high in protein. They've got that cookie dough chunk puff flavor made with that protein infused marshmallow. It is delicious. If you head over to built.com, you can use our promo code LOCKED15. It gets you 15% off of your order at built.com. Just use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at built.com. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NFL. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. When a game comes down to the leg of Justin Tucker, you can pretty much book it as a win for Baltimore. That's exactly how things ended on Sunday Night Football. Locked On Bengals and Ravens break down a tough finish for Cincy.
The Bengals offense simply took too long to start going against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Bengals have lost their 3rd game of the year on the final play of the game. I'm Jake Lisco from the Locked On Bengals podcast, where we have your daily coverage of the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals dropped to 2-3. A road loss to division rival Baltimore puts them at 0-2 in the division. Justin Tucker hits a walk-off kick for the Ravens to win 19-17. And this is a game that the Bengals could have won had the offense found its footing early. The first 4 drives for the Bengals were punt, 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out. After that, they seemed to find a way to move the football, but it just took too long. And if there's any glimmer of hope, it's that the run game out of shotgun, associating a lot of gap principles, seems to be better. They went away from the under center wide zone stuff. They leaned on the shotgun. They found something that worked there and they stuck with it, but it was just too little, too late, as the defense couldn't hold up in a late time situation where Baltimore had 3 timeouts, getting the ball back with just a field goal required to win, and they got it with the best kicker in the game.
The Baltimore Ravens pick up a massive divisional win in primetime over the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 5 by the final score of 19-17. This is Kevin Allshaker, the host over at Locked On Ravens. And in a game where both quarterbacks looked mortal in Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, the Ravens got it done on the leg of Justin Tucker, who ended up nailing 4 field goals, including the game winner as time expired. There's never a doubt when you have the greatest kicker of all time on your side if you're the Ravens. Now, for Lamar Jackson, not his best day. Again, after not his best day also in Week 4 against Buffalo. 2 overthrows for clear touchdowns on a span of 3 plays, but the offense still got the job done, at least getting into field goal range. The Ravens did only go 1 of 3 in the red zone, so that's an area they'll have to clean up. And on defense, the Ravens ended up doing just enough to win this football game. Joe Burrow did not look comfortable in the pocket. Now, the Bengals' ground game did end up overperforming for what they did over the first 4 weeks of the 2022 season. Cincinnati came into the game averaging 3.1 yards per carry. Baltimore in this game gave up 4.8 to the Cincinnati ground game. But Baltimore moves atop the AFC North with this win at 3-2. Cincinnati now tied for second with Cleveland at 2-3, and Pittsburgh in last place right now at 1-4. For more on the Baltimore Ravens and this big win against the Bengals, be sure to tune into the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Pittsburgh took an absolute thrashing from the Bills on Sunday in Buffalo, and it's more questions than answers for Locked On Steelers as Pittsburgh got their behind handed to them.
The Pittsburgh Steelers got mollywopped 38-3 by the Buffalo Bills. It wasn't even close, and it was a big sign that there's a lot of problems on both sides of the ball that might not get solved anytime soon. Kenny Pickett did come in and at least was able to keep things afloat for the first quarter. He finished 34-52 for 327 yards, did throw an interception, no touchdowns, but ultimately for a rookie quarterback to go against the number 2 defense in the NFL, that's about as good as you can get with the help that was thrown around him in this game. The running game was non-existent. The Steelers offensive line didn't do a great job providing holes there. And the Steelers receivers were just not good. George Pickens was. I'll say he was 6 catches for 83 yards on 8 targets, but Deontay Johnson had multiple inexcusable drops, multiple plays where he should have got his foot in bounds, and play things that you need to do if you're a number 1 paid wide receiver on the team. The team gave him a big extension for a reason, and he did not live up to the hype in this game, nor has he really done since the Bengals game. That's a very bad sign for the Steelers, because it's one thing if the guy that's on your rookie contract that you were hoping to turn out can improve. It's another thing he's really bad. But it's not just Deontay Johnson. The defense was terrible. The pass rush still wasn't getting home. Even if there were some missed holding calls, you still got to get after the quarterback. You still got to stop the run, and you can't give up 98-yard touchdown passes. And credit to the Bills. They're a great team, but there are still so many problems top to bottom with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I felt like there were some game plan opportunities for the Steelers there with what was on the field, but still too many questions left out there, too many opportunities left out there. And I didn't feel like there were at times situations where they gave themselves the best chance, and that was on coaching decisions. We'll break all of that down on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube for our full episodes. We'll be having all of that and a lot more very soon right here on Locked On Steelers.
A gamble by the Chargers head coach pays off as LA sneaks out of Cleveland with a win. Locked On Chargers goes over everything for us post-game.
Well, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. This is Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers after the Chargers nail-biting 30-28 win over the Cleveland Browns. Browns kicker Cade York had a chance for a 54-yard game-winning field goal at the end, but he pushed it wide right, and nobody was happier about that than Chargers head coach Brandon Staley, who just made one of the gutsiest calls of his coaching career. He decided to keep the Chargers offense on the field inside their own territory on 4th and 1. With the Browns having no timeouts left, he went for it. They didn't get it. He gift-wrapped a field goal opportunity for the Cleveland Browns, but it didn't come back to haunt him this time. Even though analytically it was the right decision to go for it there, it's not buying him much with Charger fans right now who still want many questions answered, but the Chargers rushing attack does deserve a hat tip in this game. They outrushed the Cleveland Browns 238-213 in this one. Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly absolutely went off in this game, but the Chargers still have some major issues on the defensive side that they'll have to figure out before they face off against the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. But for the full game breakdown and everything Chargers related, make sure to check out the Locked On Chargers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
More concussion issues for Miami as Teddy Bridgewater went down on Sunday and the Jets took advantage. Locked On Jets and Locked On Dolphins talk through one of the more surprising games from Week 5.
Rookie Breece Hall stars as the Jets take care of business against an injury-depleted Miami Dolphins team. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, and the New York Jets improved their record to 3-2 on Sunday as they defeated the Miami Dolphins 40-17 at MetLife Stadium. The big star was rookie Breece Hall. The Jets traded up for him in the second round because they thought he could be a centerpiece of the offense, and he did not disappoint in this game. He fell just a couple of yards short of finishing with 100 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards. He ran for 97 yards on 18 carries, added a pair of receptions for 100 yards. He played a key role in 4 Jets touchdowns. He had a 79-yard reception to set the Jets up for an early touchdown. There was another drive where he broke 4 straight big runs on a drive that concluded with a Zach Wilson touchdown scramble. He had another 21-yard reception to get the ball to the 1-yard line in the second half. And then finally, he scored his own touchdown in the fourth quarter to put the game out of reach from 5 yards out. The Jets want to establish the run this season. This was the first game that it really felt like a run-dominated offense, and that's because Breece Hall broke out. For more on the Jets, tune into the Locked On Jets podcast, free and available on all platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Adversity strikes for the Miami Dolphins as the team falls to 3-2 with a 40-17 loss to the New York Jets in Week 5 at MetLife Stadium. The Dolphins, without quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, quickly found themselves on Sunday without backup quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, flagged by concussion protocols after the first offensive play from scrimmage, which was an intentional grounding that gave the Jets the lead, which the Jets never surrendered. The Dolphins did make a valiant push throughout the middle quarters of the game, but as the Dolphins had to ramp up their aggressiveness to try to climb back into the game situations did not break the Dolphins' way. The Jets reeled off 21 consecutive points in the fourth quarter, and Miami took a 2-point deficit at the end of the third quarter, and that quickly became a 23-point loss, 40-17, dropping the Dolphins to 3-2 as they get ready for the Minnesota Vikings, and hopefully a healthier team ready to face that NFC North opponent.
That's all for today on Locked On Game to Game NFL. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts to Locked On NFL, and check out your favorite teams, Locked On podcast as well. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.